it almost sounds like a positive, but I'm not sure it is a positive to say that, hey, you've been right there and haven't found a way to win these games. And the truth is that in the Big 12, the discrepancy between the teams at the bottom and the teams at the top, it's just not very big. And so it comes down to whether you can win on the margins. And Nick, so far this year, Kansas has lost on the margins. Their 2 wins have been blowouts. Every close game they've been in, they've lost.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Paid on winter. Where this podcast. That's right, this is Baby Podcast. Instant reaction here at the K-State press box at Los Famous Stadium as Kansas loses once again in somehow even more gut-wrenching fashion than last year, and the year before that, 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 all the way back to 16 straight losses against Kansas State in the Sunflower Showdown. I'm Nick Springer, here with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank Partners and all things possible member FDIC. And Kevin, again, another game where this is now the second straight year for Kansas where it feels like they were probably the better team for a good majority of the night, but again, some bizarre plays don't go their way. In the end, it's another Sunflower Showdown loss.
Yeah, one of the things we had talked about on the show was the chances that this is going to be a pretty close game. And when it came down to a close game, one of the things that unfortunately we didn't like about Kansas' chances were one of these 2 teams this season has shown an ability to win a close game, make the play when it matters most. The other one has kind of not made the play when it mattered most. And you extrapolate that and take it even the length of the recent rivalry, and then one of these teams has shown the propensity to make the right play when it matters most, and the other one didn't. And sure enough, this one came down to it. Kansas State, you have to give credit to K-State because Kansas, had that lead in the fourth quarter. A 51-yard field goal. Chris Tennant, we talk all the time about how Kansans are really important in this rivalry. Chris Tennant from Mill Valley winds up knocking through a 51-yarder really on the edge of his range.
Yes.
And makes the kick. And so you do have to give that credit to Kansas State. At the same time, the way that this one went, Nick, with the mistakes from Kansas, it's going to be another one year for the Jams.
Yeah, I mean, look, KU had 3 possessions in the third and fourth quarter with the lead to really try to go ice the game and really couldn't do it, right? Which is really disappointing. They had to punt, they had to do it in his fumble as well. But we'll get to more of that later. Let's kind of go more chronologically through here. At the beginning of the game, Kansas starts the game about as well as you can ask. Straight down the field. I think it's pretty clear now that Jeff Grimes is pretty good at just scripting the start of games. Because again, KU goes right down the field and scores to start the game on offense and looks really good doing it. Obviously, then the defense gets a stop as well. And then really probably the first of many key plays in the game that when it gets KU happens when KU's up 7 late in the first quarter. Jaylen Daniels throws maybe the best throw I think I've ever seen him throw in a game.
Yeah.
I mean, an absolute dime, an NFL-level throw, no question about it, with NFL scouts in attendance tonight, right into the hands of Quentin Skinner in the about 5-yard sweep in the end zone, and whoop, right through incomplete.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate deal because obviously Quentin Skinner has really struggled a lot this year, Nick, and has had some drops, some fumbles, some different things, but it really looked like he was breaking out when you look at his performance against Arizona State, when you look at the long touchdown catch he had against Houston, and the way that Skinner seemed to be sort of elevating his play each week. That wasn't a drop that I expected him to make. Ran a great route to get behind the defense and then ultimately wound up dropping that pass. Kansas is forced to punt, didn't get any points from it. And that felt like a turning point, but there were more turning points yet to come.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, you think about that sequence for KU, you're up 7-0, you have a chance to make it 14-0. The crowd was totally out.
Yep.
Completely taken out of it. You end up punting. You're able to pin them at their own 5, actually, and then K-State proceeds to go on a 13-play, 95-yard touchdown drive to get the crowd right back into the game. Avery Johnson makes a couple scrambles, and that was kind of the other issue. Was I think overall the defense kind of played pretty well, all things considered. except for you give up a couple of explosive plays in the run game, and obviously Avery scrambling again was an issue for KU, which that's been a theme for KU on defense with many scrambling quarterbacks. And Avery Johnson burned at the beginning, but K-State goes and scores. It's 7-7 at that point. I'm thinking, okay, things are okay, still a tie game. And then the infamous special teams play happens again for Kansas, where Jamil Croft, he catches it. Originally, they indicate that he was inbounds and they mark him at the 1. Then there's a discussion with the officials. They switch it. They throw the flag. They say it's at 35. And then they go and review it, which I didn't even realize this was a reviewable thing. And 5 minutes later, they come back up. They say, actually, Jamil Croft's foot was inbounds when he caught it. So he's inbounds and then out of bounds at the 1. That's where KU has the ball. So just a disastrous sequence for KU. And listen, K-State tried that strategy throughout their game. It was clear that they evidently thought that they could exploit KU in some way by doing that. And they ended up taking it out of bounds later in the game. But that's one of those strategies, Kevin, where if it works once, it's worth. Right. Yeah. And obviously, in this case, it very much was. K-State wins by 2 points, and the next play, Kansas gave up the safety to K-State in that situation. So it's obviously a strategy that K-State evidently felt that they could try to exploit against KU, and it worked. Jamil Croft, in that situation, just put your foot out of bounds and touch it, and it's a flat. Right?
Yep.
And instead, he's able to secure it inbounds still before going out of bounds, and he gets stuck at the 1-yard line. And we've talked about it, but in 2022, you have a muff punt after a 3-and-out to start the game. In 2023, last year, you have a muff punt late in the game with the lead that ultimately leads to you losing. And here again, you have a critical play early in the game where you catch it and go out of bounds that sets up you at the 1-yard line and then immediately into a safety.
Yeah, immediately into a safety. And when you look at Kansas missing an extra point later in the game, it'll get there. Kansas lost this game by 2 points. And so that's the winning margin right there. 28-27 is what Kansas wins this game by if you take away a doink of an extra point and the safety that Kansas gave away. Even if you take out the Skinner drop, you take out some of the other mistakes, that's your margin right there. And so it seemed like a huge deal at the time, and it certainly set K-State up for the Wildcats to go down and take an even bigger lead.
Yeah, so K-State goes up 9-7 at that point, and obviously it's just one of those things where you expect it to snowball.
Yeah,
and it really kind of does. K-State goes and immediately scores on the next drive to make it 16-7 at that point on a touchdown pass from Avery Johnson to Garrett Oakley. Was that the Tim Tebow jump pass? I believe.
Yes, yeah.
Tebow jump pass that K-State called that was very effective, and they scored a touchdown to make it 16-7. And again, it's like in this situation, if you're KU, and if you go and basically a 5-minute span of game time, 4-minute span of game time, and you go from a drop deep touchdown to make it 14-0 to all of a sudden going down 16-7 after the special teams gaff, the safety, and then another touchdown by K-State. And I actually, Kevin, at that point in the game, I thought, okay, this is going to be the ultimate test for Kansas. Are they going to just completely crumble away off of that sequence of events, or will they respond? And a lot of credit needs to go to KU in this situation.
Yeah,
they absolutely did respond on the next drive.
It's unfortunate, and we're going to get to Jaylen's stuff, but it really is unfortunate that he did have the couple plays go against him because Kansas is nowhere near this game. Jaylen Daniels doesn't have the game that he wound up having.
Yeah,
and he was a big part of that next drive. Kansas, like you said, responded great. I mean,
yes,
75 yards and 6 plays, goes right down the field, scores to cut it to 16-14 and you kind of just said game on, right? Because if Kansas would have punted there, K-State would have gone up further, you would have kind of seen things start to get away from them. But instead, what happens is you march right down the field right before halftime, and they wind up not only getting a score there, but Nick, they did not allow a score to K-State to end the half,
that's true.
Which has been a huge issue this year. And so wind up, going into halftime, trailing 16-14, but ultimately kind of feeling like, okay, K-State does get the ball to start the third quarter, but Kansas is hanging in this thing despite the mistakes at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no question about it. In that situation, kind of given the circumstances, I think if you're KU, at least this is how I felt going into the half. The time was like, sigh of relief. Just like, okay, 16-14, all things considered, considering the safety, the special teams gaps, and the drop TD, only being down 2, it's kind of that weird like catch-22 where it doesn't feel that bad, but then on the flip side, it's like, oh gosh, it feels almost worse to be in that situation. So it was sort of a catch-22 moment there for KU in that situation, but they go into the half down by 2. I do want to get into Jaylen Daniels, like you mentioned. I want to talk about them more. But let's go to a break real quick. We're going to be coming right back. As always, though, you can check out Home Field Apparel. Look, you're probably down. You're probably sad, just like us here. But Home Field Apparel can cheer you up, man. Home Field Apparel can cheer you up. And you can go to homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code PAY24, 15% off your first order. You can shop tons of different schools. I've got in College Ball 25, I've got a Ball State Dynasty, so I decided to buy myself a Ball State shirt, because why not? So you can shop any other school besides KU or wherever suits your fancy. PAY24 is the promo code, and homefieldapparel.com. We're back with more instant reaction to KU and K-State.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone in any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts with you. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/payheed. That's mintmobile.com/payheed. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/payheed. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
This is the Baby Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer alongside Kevin Flaherty. Instant reaction here in the K-State Press Box at Bill Snyder Family Stadium in Manhattan, Kansas. Losing to K-State, unfortunately, 29-27 in Sunflower Showdown. It's now 16 straight losses for KU. Another game where Kansas felt like they were right there. Certainly the talent was right there equally between these two teams, but a couple of plays go against the Jayhawks, and they lose again in Manhattan, 29-27. But if you kind of mentioned Jaylen Daniels there before I went to break, Kevin, and I want to dive deeper into him because you touched on it. Jaylen Daniels, you look at the stat sheet, and the numbers aren't going to blow you away. Only 209 yards passing, 1 touchdown, the 1 interception. He did have 66 yards rushing and a touchdown as well. So the numbers don't blow you away statistically, but this was by far his best game of the season, and maybe one of the best games he's played in his career at KU, I would venture to go that far as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And you have to kind of add like a 50-yard passing touchdown in there as well. So if you're doing that, with the ball going right through Skinner's hands, he would have had over 310 yards, combined between rushing and passing, and against a really good defense. And when you look at what he was able to do to escape pressure in some circumstances, the way that he was able to stir up the game with its legs, Devin Neal wasn't super effective in this one. It wasn't that he was bad and he got banged up a little bit early. And then didn't really break, had a couple big carries after that. But for the most part, the running game was a lot on Jaylen Daniels' shoulders as well as the passing game. And he really did a nice job of keeping Kansas in the game when it felt like the game might slip away, and ultimately was a big part of Kansas getting a lead.
Yeah, I would be remiss if we didn't rewind back real quick and talk about that Savion Morrison touchdown.
Oh, sure.
That is my guy, baby. Savion Morrison, shout out. That was awesome because obviously he was down. Daniel Highshaw didn't play at all tonight. Didn't even see him in warm-ups, warming up for KU. So he was pretty much totally inactive from the start. Then you mentioned Devin Neal kind of gets dinged up a little bit. Went to the locker room at one point, comes back with some sort of shoulder brace it looked like maybe for him. And as you said, he ended up making some plays later in the game. But Savion Morrison steps up for that touchdown earlier in the game. My guy had 3 carries. but he got one of them for 30 yards for a touchdown. So shout out to Savion Morrison. Okay, Edel's touch right there, but back to Jaylen Daniels. Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, he was making some absolutely incredible plays tonight. Scrambling around, throwing the ball in the run, some absolute lasers that he had. Trevor Wilson, by the way, huge game for him as well, a big breakout game. 4 catches, 69 yards for Wilson. He was really, really good and really reliable as well. Yeah. I mean, I can remember at least 2 or 3 of those passes to Wilson were just absolute missiles. Yeah, Jaylen Daniels, which are not easy to catch, especially in some of the situations where it was under tight coverage. But yeah, Jaylen Daniels, again, the numbers aren't going to blow you away. And I think a lot of fans will jump to, well, he fumbled late. That kind of cost team the game. Yeah. But I mean, I don't think you can say enough about the way he played. It's clear he left it all on the line with his body and played with a lot of heart. And I feel bad for him, right? Because, for someone like Jaylen Daniels, Devin Neal, the receivers, all those guys, like, this was their last chance. This was their last chance to try to really, leave a lasting legacy by snapping the streak and beating K-State in Manhattan, and so close and yet so far.
Jaylen technically could have another year left, but to your point, yeah, I mean, it was there for them to not just snap the streak, but to snap it in Manhattan, where Kansas hasn't won since 2007. So yeah, when you look at that, that's a little bit disappointing. The one thing we didn't talk about right before half is Kansas is moving, getting closer to field goal range. They do take a shot down the field for Trevor Wilson. Trevor Wilson gets kind of taken out by a K-State defender. Jaylen's throw was probably a little too long for them to call that pass interference. If he leaves that thing like a yard shorter, though, maybe you might have gotten that call. And so I worry that people are going to focus on kind of those 2 turnovers and say, well, gosh, you might have cost yourself a field goal there, with the lost fumble, being a big play as well. But the truth is like I said, Kansas isn't anywhere near K-State in this game. They may get absolutely run in this game without Jaylen Daniels putting together the effort that he did.
Yeah, I mean, the interception was probably really the only, up to, I guess, the fumble too, which will be true, but those 2 plays ended up being, the interception ended up being fine. K-State didn't get anything out of it. But obviously you had a chance to get some points if you're from the KU perspective. But yeah, 100% agree. Like I said, I think that the stats aren't really reflected. If you're looking at it, if you're just scoreboard watching or stat watching, box score watching, the stats are going to jump out at you. But I do believe this was one of Jaylen Daniels' best games that he's played probably for KU. Just from an intensity standpoint, from a heart standpoint, from just leaving it all on the field.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate again that he had a couple of mistakes that he did that probably people are going to focus on. But I thought he played really well. So yeah. And then to start the second half, KU is down 16-14. And listen, we talked about it in the pre-show. I really thought DJ Giddens was going to be a real X factor in this game, and Kansas really kind of bottled him up for the most part, except for to start the second half when he did bust off a 54-yard run that resulted in K-State going and scoring on a run from Avery Johnson. So it was one of those games where I think the defense, like I said earlier, overall played pretty well, but just a couple plays here and there that really kind of hurt them. This was one of them that allowed K-State to score. There's another one later in the second half from Dylan Edwards, in a similar situation. That one ends up in a turnover, though, for KU, I think. But even still, DJ Giddens gets his a little bit on this drive, and it leads to K-State to score quickly out of half. KU goes back down 9. But again, I think Kansas, the response of this team cannot be emphasized enough. I think for a lot of KU fans through the 2000s, the late 2000s and 2010s, right, you would just, time and time again, you would see KU teams just kind of roll over and die and not really do much, right? And even though the record's not going to reflect it because this KU team is now 2-6, there is still a lot of fight within this team, within this program, right? And that's one of the things where I do hear from Lance Leipold each week saying that, it's reflected on the field. This team is not quitting, right? They're not quitting. And they fight back again in this situation against K-State, down 9, but they're able to come back. There was kind of that weird play with Cole Ballard where they randomly brought in Cole Ballard for a run, and then he got hurt, or I'm not really sure what that was about. And then ultimately Devin Neal goes for a touchdown, by the way, on a 24-yard run.
On a third down carry. Kansas ran the ball. It's kind of funny. I think fans joke around about Jeff Grimes saying, hey, sometimes the best
look,
time to run
early on in the first half,
third down.
Well, half K-State had a 3rd and 10 and ran HB dot with Dylan Edwards and got a first down.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I think the Savion Morrison touchdown was a 3rd down run as well. And so Grimes has said, hey, sometimes the best time to run the ball is when nobody thinks you're going to run the ball. And I'm sure if it hadn't worked out, people would have said 3rd and 7, running Devin. What the heck are you thinking? 24-yard touchdown. It worked out. And so they ran the ball pretty well and kept K-State, off guard on some of those plays, which I think I'm sure we're going to get into late game play calling. But at the same time, I did think that up to that point, I thought Grimes really called a good game and did a nice job of keeping K-State off balance. And in that case, that allowed Kansas to pull back to be pretty close. But Nick missed extra point off the goalpost.
Doink extra point. Listen, everybody loves a doink, except when it happens to you. Chicago Bears fans know that best, right? The double doink was awesome for everybody else. So similar situation here. You get the doink from Tabor Allen and another special teams play that negatively impacts Kansas. So you're still down 3 at this point. And then this is the drive where K-State gets another long run from Dylan Edwards, up 23-20. They get a 50-yard run from Edwards down into the red zone. And then Avery Johnson, we were watching the replay here. It looked like he was trying to pump fake, I think.
Yeah.
He was scrambling to his right and was trying to pump fake and tuck it and run. And instead, he just dropped the ball, and Kansas recovers in the red zone. So a very significant play. Noah Dotson got hurt on that play, but he ended up coming back, which was huge for KU. It looked like he was maybe going to be out for a little bit. I mean, he was on the ground for a while. But, a fortunate bounce for KU, and a bounce that typically wouldn't go their way in this type of rivalry in that situation. And Kansas was able to then capitalize off of it as well.
Yeah, and the play just before that, when Dylan Edwards broke the 44-yard run, O.J. Burroughs made a really tough, I thought, tackle in space, where if he doesn't make that tackle, Dylan Edwards might have gotten into the end zone. Instead, you get the ball back on the very next play. And O.J. Burroughs is a guy that Brian Borland talked about before the season, said, hey, last year he was kind of up and down, and the main area where he was down was tackling. And he made a couple big tackles that helped Kansas out in this one in sort of key moments. You don't think about the guy making the tackle at the end of a 44-yard play, but if it keeps him out of the end zone, it lets you live to fight another day, and that wound up happening. And they kind of traded back and forth a little bit there, and so Kansas.
The 4th and 2 at the 46.
Yes, the 4th and 2 at the 46 was one that I think was panned in real time, and certainly panned by us, you and I, in the press box, where it was, okay, in this situation, you're down 23-20. It's in the third quarter. You're only 2 yards away. You're at midfield in sort of that weird spot where there's a very real chance that you punt the ball into the end zone for a touchback. And so in a lot of those cases, it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and go for it. Kansas didn't, punted the ball, went into the end zone. Ultimately, didn't really wind up hurting them because the defense got a snap, got a stop. But at the same time, I think it kind of sends a message to your team too in those situations when you're being more aggressive or you're being really passive in those situations. Kansas seemed like he was playing to not make the mistake at that point, and wound up punting it back to K-State.
Yeah, and honestly, it ends up working out well, like you mentioned, because K-State ends up kind of shaking their punt.
Yeah,
when KU gets the stop, and KU gets to dang the ball right near midfield again. But yeah, I think in that moment, right, you're on the road, it's a rivalry game, it's the third quarter at this point. You should want to go for it, I think, in that situation. And again, obviously, it ended up working out, and that's the thing about those types of coaching decisions. It's if they work out, it's great. If they don't, then you're mad. In this case, it did end up working out for KU. They end up getting the ball back again. K-State actually ended up shanking that punt. On that ensuing drive, they got the ball back to KU, and a huge play. Right, this time they go to Luke Grimm. we kind of talked about Quinn Skinner already a little bit, but you have to wonder if Jaylen Daniels' confidence in throwing the ball deep to him is shaken a little bit versus Luke Grimm, who has been very reliable. They go to him on a deep post, and Grimm comes back to the ball, makes a nice catch, and sets up KU for a touchdown.
Yeah, it was a great throw on that one. He actually left it a little bit short.
Yeah,
he had to come back to it. But Grimm had enough room and came back and made the play. But two deep throws, I guess he technically said it. If you hit one of two deep balls like that, then you're feeling pretty good. But when they're both in your receiver's hands, you really want to get both of them. That set up, I think Devin Neal got the ball right after that. And then Jaylen Daniels with a really nice physical touchdown run helped by the offensive line gets in it. And all of a sudden, Nick, you're in I don't want to say quite the exact same situation, but pretty much the exact same situation that we saw a year ago, where last year KU let K-State 27-24 heading into the fourth quarter. In this case, wound up being 27-23, actually a point better to the good heading into the fourth quarter. But it was also another situation where you kind of felt like, okay, Kansas is up. They have chances here. How are they going to respond, and can they get this thing home? And ultimately, it didn't wind up happening that way.
Yeah, and the fourth quarter is where things get really interesting. K-State ends up going down and getting a short field goal. Really good job by the KU defense in the red zone. There was a drop, what looked like a wide open touchdown drop from K-State in the end zone that helps KU deny them that and kick a field goal to make it 27-26. And yeah, this is where this final 13-ish minutes of the game, I think, is what's really going to haunt KU, because you had multiple possessions with the lead to try and go down and really put the nail in the coffin and really try either, extend the lead at the very least or go down and make a statement. And it just time and time again, Kansas couldn't capitalize. They end up with the ball, and their first possession, they don't get a first down at all. They end up having to punt it back to K-State, but KU's defense against Sansol. And again, this kind of goes back to my point of the KU defense, I think, deserves some credit, because they've been getting shredded, obviously, and had some games where I think you could definitively look at the defense and say, hey, this was this was the reason why KU lost this game. In this particular case, the KU defense kind of did their job for a majority of the fourth quarter. Like, they were able to make some plays and prevent K-State from scoring throughout the fourth quarter. But the KU offense just couldn't get things going. I think the one play, Kevin, that I want to really highlight is the flea flicker.
Yeah.
KU gets the ball, and it's 2nd and 4, in the middle of the fourth quarter, and they go for a flea flicker. Jaylen Daniels looks downfield. It's well covered by K-State. He tries to scramble. There was a holding penalty called against Logan Brown, which I've seen people say it wasn't a holding. I didn't get a really great replay view of it.
Yeah.
So unclear on that one, but to me, I want to get your opinion on this. It kind of felt as though towards the end of the fourth quarter, KU was looking for a knockout type, like a knockout punch type play, instead of maybe just trusting what they've been doing throughout the game, methodically moving the ball on the field, burning some clock. I don't know if panic is the right term, but it certainly felt as if they got to the point where they were kind of pressing and wanting to make a big play to really try to knock K-State out, and it kind of backfired on them in this particular case with the flea flicker play that K-State covered well. Then you have the hold to back them up. But I don't know. Did you get that sense too that later in the game it felt to me as though KU they were pressing for a big play and just kind of get more ahead and try to not lose the game, and ultimately backfired.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I think when you think about it like a boxer, right? Like Kansas got to that spot, like throwing body punches. And I really think that was the way Kansas needed to continue to go. It was lead on that running game, continue to hit with body punches, and kind of wear K-State down through the fourth quarter, keep the clock running, all of those different things. And instead, you basically saw them back up and throw a haymaker. And if you connect, great. Like if the flea flicker works and you hit on a touchdown pass, yeah, K-State's absolutely on the ropes at that point. But it was a low percentage haymaker attempt. And I think that they got a little bit too cute when in some cases, when you look at, we're obviously talking about a lot of the things that went wrong, and that happens in a loss. Nick, the offensive line I thought was really good today, and I thought that they did a really good job against a terrific K-State defensive line. They were able to pave the way for a good running game. For the most part, they kept Jaylen really clean until K-State started setting 80 billion people.
Basically resorted to all-out blitzes every play late in the game to try to disrupt Jaylen Daniels, which it did kind of work. But yeah, and I will just say this as well. Like, we talked about Jaylen Daniels, how well he's played. Like, the other aspect of this is I kind of understand giving the ball to Jaylen Daniels.
Yeah.
Right? Like, giving the ball to your quarterback, you've been playing a great game, and say, hey, go win the game for us, right? Like, I understand that thought process, but I think I kind of agree with you on this, in this point of like, hey, look, if you can just burn some clock and get a couple first downs, and in this situation, you're up by one. You don't even have to go get a touchdown. Just go get a field goal and force K-State to then have to try to get a touchdown to take the lead. And instead, it just didn't really work out, and KU kind of has a blunder there. But again, the defense stands tall. The defense. I mean, Miller Dotson with a great play on a fourth down. I don't know, the fourth down. It was like 4th down and 12 for K-State later in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
I was a little surprised they went for it. I mean, there's still 7 minutes left in the game at that point. It's 4th and 12. They were at the Kansas 42-yard line. So again, no man's land, but it's not like it was like 4th and 6. But they end up going for it. Miller Dotson breaks it up, and then KU again with 7 minutes left. This is where you're thinking, okay, go take 4 or 5 minutes off the clock, get a field goal or a touchdown or something to really, really put some game pressure on Kansas State. And that just doesn't happen again for KU, as they again, it's Jaylen Daniels scrambling. And for as great as Jaylen Daniels was all night, this was obviously the play that I think most people are going to remember from him.
Yeah,
on a scramble play where initially it looks wide open, K-State collapses down on him, and Jaylen Daniels, instead of just trying to get down, really tries to make a play, takes a helmet straight to the football, it comes out, and K-State recovers.
Yeah, and I think, too, right before that was the false start on Bryce Cabledew that put them really behind the chains, and it had them facing that second 13, and Jaylen ran for 9, winds up fumbling. It was a good hit right on the ball.
Yeah.
But he needed to get down. Even if he didn't quite get 9, if you get 7 there, you're at 3rd and 6, you're fighting another down, and you're in a spot where you can pick something up. Instead, he fumbles the ball, K-State picks it up. It was a huge deal. Nick, the defense allowed 2.2 yards per play in the fourth quarter. Like, we've seen so many times this year, the defense really struggled in the fourth quarter, really wore down. I didn't really see a whole lot of that. And I want to give credit where credit's due, too. Brian Borland saw the same thing we saw, which is Kansas was not pressuring Avery Johnson. They were sending guys, weren't getting there. They weren't sending guys, they weren't getting there. And he sent Marvin Grant to get a huge sack that kind of put K-State in a bad spot that led to that 4th and 12. He also sent Marvin Grant late in a play that almost wound up being a turnover from Kansas.
They almost had the sack that would have driven K-State way out of field goal range.
Yeah, and then that ball popped up and it was almost picked off, too. And so really nice adjustment, I thought, with the game on the line to send Grant on those plays. Grant had 2 really great plays there to help Kansas get off the field in one case, and this one set Tennant up for a field goal from 51, and that's a long kick. And Tennant, I'm not saying he has a bad leg, but he's more known for being an accurate guy as opposed to being a guy with a bad leg.
If that was a 53-yarder, I'm not sure he makes it.
Yeah.
And that way.
And so, like I said, you have to give credit to Tennant for making that kick. Like, this game isn't all KU didn't make the plays. There is some, like, hey, that's a really clutch kick from a college kicker in a rivalry game for 51 yards. That's not an easy kick at all. And that ultimately put K-State up. But Kansas had 1:42 left at that point to try and do something. And here's where, Nick, K-State is I mean, I still think they're sending guys at
engage eight.
Yeah,
it's engage eight every play.
Yeah, and so it was, first down. It leads to an incompletion. Jaylen kind of runs, and then he hits LJ Arnold for a 12-yard gain and a first down.
Really great pass on that play.
Yeah, that was a terrific pass, a great catch. But I think when you looked at that final, 4 downs, or if you will, I think all of us thought K-State was going to continue to send all those players. And so, like I said, I think Grimes deserves a lot of credit for the way he called a lot of the game. I think one of the reasons that people have issues with the play calling has been in close games like this, you can circle a play or two or a few different ones where you can say that situational play calling maybe wasn't the best. And earlier in the fourth quarter, Kansas probably should have been running the ball. They should have brought that clock down. They were running the ball effectively, at least on earlier downs. And in this case, heading into those last few downs, a screen pass or something like that, or finding a way to give Jaylen a hot route or something that would be there in case K-State sent those guys, probably would have been the play, and instead it didn't wind up working out.
Well, and one thing I wanted to bring up with you, Kevin, because we were kind of squinting our eyes looking at this post-game, that 3rd down and 7 pass to Jared Casey, that was very quickly and emphatically ruled incomplete. And Jared Casey did not really argue it, but we were looking at some replays that looked like maybe there could have been a case to be made for that play to be reviewed. But it ends up not being the case. And then on the 4th down play, it looks like Jaylen Daniels maybe has the edge, but I don't know if he was trying to make a pass really before he got the line of scrimmage on a scramble to the right.
Yeah.
And he just gets sacked, hit, ball goes out of bounds, and that's all she wrote for the game. So in the end, I talked about it in our pre-show actually, that there is no talent disparity between these two teams.
Yeah.
These two teams are very evenly matched. The difference is K-State and I'm just looking at it from a big picture, like the whole season perspective. K-State, they've been able to win close games, and KU has not, right? And, we mentioned in the pre-show again, like even though the records aren't really there, we thought this game might be live up to sort of the billing of the preseason, I guess, so to speak. And obviously it certainly did, right? I mean, if KU comes into this game at, 5-2 or 6-1, this game would have been a huge matchup. And it still ended up being that way, even though the record's not reflected in that. The talent disparity is not there. It's not existent between these two teams. It's just that, and that's probably, I think, what makes things even more frustrating for KU is that they continue to trip up in a game like this. And now, of course, 2-6, right? And you look at the rest of the schedule. I know you tweeted this earlier in the evening, Kevin, about KU's schedule, where all of a sudden dodging Oklahoma State and Utah and Arizona looks terrible, and you got to play Iowa State and BYU on the road instead. It's not looking good for KU. I mean, I'm just going to put it that way. Like a bowl game seems almost out of reach at this point at 2-6, considering the Final Four games you have left. You throw in Colorado, who's been really good so far this year as well. Baylor got a big win earlier in the day on Saturday as well. So hopefully KU can find a way to recover from this. The good news is they will have a bye week now to sort of, lick their wounds and try to recover and really, hit the ground running with these last 4 games of the season. But yeah, I don't know. I'll just give you a chance to give me the floor here for just some final takeaways, I guess, and maybe where KU goes from here.
Yeah, I think this was one, I don't want to say you had to have it, but it was one where it feels like you had to have it when you add up all the close losses over the course of the season. And to your point, Chris Kleiman deserves a lot of credit, because K-State, when they get into close games and close games against KU even, you get the sense that they feel like they're going to make the play that they need to make. When you look at their win against Colorado, Avery Johnson hits on a long bomb to win that game at the very end of that contest. And so I do think that it would be very easy to look at this KU team and say, my gosh, 7-1 is kind of right there. And even the TCU loss, which wound up being double digits, you're down a point in the fourth quarter. And you were down a point in the fourth quarter, again, because of mistakes that you kind of made over the course of that game. And so all of these have been opportunities for Kansas. If Jaylen Daniels plays the way that he did outside of the 2 turnovers in this one, then Kansas can play with anybody left on the schedule. That gives them a puncher's chance, even against teams that are significantly better than that. And I don't know that out of the teams that are left on the schedule, that there are a lot of teams that are significantly better than Kansas. And so that's, it almost sounds like a positive, but I'm not sure it is a positive to say that, hey, you've been right there and haven't found a way to win these games. And the truth is that in the Big 12, the discrepancy between the teams at the bottom and the teams at the top, it's just not very big. And so it comes down to whether you can win on the margins. And Nick, so far this year, Kansas has lost on the margins. Their 2 wins have been blowouts. Every close game they've been in, they've lost.
Yeah, I mean, look, this K-State team may very well go on to play for the Big 12 title.
Yeah,
that's
they should. They should.
And you just played a game where you probably should have won on their home turf.
Yeah,
right. So that really kind of sums up where KU season is at this point. It's like just a couple plays here and there could be the difference. And you mentioned it, like in the Big 12, we kind of knew this coming into the season that the Big 12 was going to be a gauntlet, right? Like a lot of people looked at KU's schedule initially and said, oh, it's an easy schedule or manageable schedule or whatever. But like, I think you and I both knew, I think certainly previewing the season was that there was going to be a lot of games that were going to be played close.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for KU, they just haven't found a way to win any of those close games. And like you said, it's sort of a double-edged sword because you look at the last 4 games, and again, yes, I think KU is going to be in these last 4 games. They're going to have a great chance to win these last 4 games, but they've proven over their 6 losses that they haven't been able to really win those types of games. So it's like, well, crap. What's it going to be? Is KU going to eventually get one of these, and is it going to be too little, too late, or whatever? So, the last thing I'll say is again, I really feel for the seniors for KU this year because this was a chance to really stamp a real legacy, right? Of, hey, look, getting to a bowl game in 2022, then winning 9 games in 2023. And while 2024 maybe did go the way we hoped from a big picture perspective, we snapped the streak, right? We ended the losing streak against K-State, and we did it in Manhattan. And instead, you don't have that either. So it's a real bummer for those guys.
Yeah, I think nobody's going to want to hear this, but I think it speaks a lot to the seniors, and quite frankly, it speaks a lot to Lance Leipold as well, that they bowed up and competed in this circumstance. It would have been very easy when Kansas State builds that lead that you basically collapse and say, you know what, it's not our game, it's not our year. I think the way that they fought to take the lead, and quite frankly, after Jaylen's turnover, the way the defense competed to make sure that Chris Tennant didn't have an easy kick, right? They didn't run into the end zone real quickly. They didn't set up a short field goal that meant that there was no time left on the clock. No, they battled every second of this one. And I do think there's something to be said for that. Again, though, when you're winning or losing based on the margins, a lot of things come back to either help you or haunt you. Turnovers are a big thing. Missing your gap on a play when it leads to a big run, that adds up in a really close game. Clock mismanagement is something that, again, adds up. And so, and special teams adds up. And so when you have a dropped pass, when you have a turnover because a guy is trying to do too much, when you have basically a safety that was caused by a special teams misfit, and then you also have a doinked extra point. Those are the margins that these games are won and lost by. And to your point, that's probably why K-State is going to go to the Big 12 title game, and it's probably going to be why Kansas winds up falling short of a bowl game. That's still there for them. They can still get there, but they're going to need to find a way to reverse those margins in order to do so.
As I said, KU will have a bye week next week to try to recover before they put together something for these last 4 games. The season, which we'll be talking about as well. We're also going to be talking more KU basketball. There was an exhibition that happened that Friday night. I haven't got a chance to break down or talk about too much quite yet. We'll be doing that later earlier this week as well. So be sure to keep an eye out on your feeds, both on the audio side and on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jocks KCSN for more content with KU football and KU basketball all throughout the rest of this fall and into the winter with KU basketball as well, with the season just around the corner. So once again, KU loses 29-27. We have been here with our instant reaction in the Bill Snyder Family Stadium press box. And for Kevin Flaherty, I'm Nick Springer. Hang in there. Life will maybe get better. I don't know. We'll see. But until then, we'll talk to you again soon. See you.